Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Led by Life. We're your hosts, I'm Rafaela, and this is Hannah. And we're just going to get right into it. We're on Gene Key 32. We're halfway through the Gene Keys through this journey. Yeah. And I'm going to let you just share with me and the rest of the world, like what you were going to share about this Gene Key or how it relates to your life.
Well, it's funny because every time we're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I don't know about this one, or, it'll be interesting to see. And then there's always something that relates. But it was funny because I'm laughing because I'd said to you, I think last week, oh, I haven't been stressing about money lately. And I've just been feeling pretty like peaceful about it because for the last few years, I've been quite stressed about money. I've been working for myself and it's been a lot harder than I expected to make an income and to have that kind of stability. And, I thought I was at a place of peace and feeling content and feeling okay with where I was at. And then just the last week, I've had all these triggers come up around money. So, and all this fear of failure, that's been the real like underlying feeling and the underlying message. So I just thought it was very funny that that's really what this Gene Key is all about.
Something in me wonders if it's like Source's way of co-creating with us while we're on this journey to give us sort of a flavor of what this is. Because again, you nor I have this one defined. So we're on Gene Key 32, which is the shadow of failure and the gift. Remind me, forgetting.
I think it's preservation. So it's to do with like what needs to be preserved, like taking the good parts of, but constantly like evolving
Yeah.
and changing. Yeah.
And how do you pronounce the city?
Uh veneration? Is that
Veneration? Okay. Yeah, I didn't check the pronunciation of it, but I just kept saying it and I was wondering how you pronounce it. Veneration, right?
well, let's see. This is what I love about having a Kindle.
Oh, right.
Because I can look it up. I can look the word up. So yeah, I think veneration, great respect, reverence, the traditional veneration of saints. That's like the little dictionary description.
Yeah.
Great respect, reverence is how I kind of took
Mm.
it.
Yeah. Reverence. Yeah, I was thinking that, but that's not how that word is spelled. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's what I kind of wonder because um I
I
feel
love
you
that.
on that. Like
I love that perspective. Like Source is co-creating with us and showing us also where we're at in relation to these energies, because neither of us have it defined, but in a way that, and we both have open spleens, open splenic center in human design, which is all around fear. So it's almost like pointing us to where we're at and in a loving kind of awareness way.
Yeah.
Bringing it to, yeah.
It's just interesting because so there's this idea of like success and failure, right? And in the shadow, he talks a lot about how our modern world has sort of transitioned from success being the continuance of lineage through your seed.
Mm.
You're finding a mate through procreation, through survival in that sense of the tribe, because we're also in the tribal circuitry here,
Yeah.
to now success being a little bit more materialized because you can survive essentially if you have enough money, you can completely survive on your own, right?
Yeah.
And
But
how,
is that success
right,
as
and
well?
right. but sort of tying this idea in of success and failure, and really at the root of it being the fear of failure. And so it's funny because there's a part where he's like, whenever you're worrying about money, just stop, take a deep breath, smile, know that it's an illusion and that it's going to come when it's needed, is what he says. And I love that because, I mean, I've shared with you before, in different settings, like my kind of story in this regard, that when I've had moments where I've had to like fully trust in my instinct, my intuition in regard to the center, right? Like if we're talking about like my instinct in the splenic center, um, it's always worked out. Like I have always been really fully supported on a monetary way, in a monetary way, when I've made decisions that have had to have like this leap forward without knowing the outcome, like sort of this surrender. And it was just a reminder of that. And also, like how you say things were coming up for you this week, I'm noticing that for me, the way in which I view myself as successful has shown up because, you know, I'm having an experience with my work where I'm in a role that I've been in for a few months now, and it sort of seems like with anything, things take time to settle in and for you to get adjusted and all that, right? But I'm finally at a moment where like all the things that I thought define my success in what I do and even as a person, I'm not really doing those exact things anymore. I'm doing them sort of in a different way. And because I haven't done them before, I even said this to a coworker yesterday. I was like, I feel like we're losing. And it's interesting because like the gate that it meets is the 54, which is the gate of drive. And I don't know if there's really too much of a competition feeling with the gate of drive. It is this like energy of like driving things forward and having this real like direction to like ambition.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, ambition. And that's kind of like where I'm like everything in regard to this and kind of like what I do and my ambition and how I have this like direction when I get focused on a new goal or something. And I've really made it a point right now of emphasis to focus on me, like in a different kind of way than I have in the past, like bringing in more playfulness. And as I've shared with you, like I'm doing the artist way, so doing things differently for myself. And yeah, I'm just like, how interesting that it's like showing itself now in this moment.
Yeah, like you're almost being asked to completely redefine what success looks like for you, but taking, preserving those parts from the past that were useful and helpful, and those skills and different, different areas of success, but like redefining it and bringing new
Yeah.
things forward. Do you have the 54th defined?
Yeah,
Yeah, me too.
right.
So
And
I felt that, like, I wonder if I need to do a little bit more research into hanging gates and like how that kind of can show up, how that influences the energetics when there's like the hanging gate. I understand it as though you're always searching for that kind of energy to make up that channel. So you'll like attract people who do complete the channel.
mhm.
But I definitely feel that almost amplified like ambition and drive, but without that, but with the also amplified fear of failure on the other end, because there isn't that perhaps channel.
Mm-hmm.
Do
And
you understand what I'm saying?
well, I was gonna say, well, one, I wanted to go back for a second because I wanted to ask you, so like, as you've noticed this surface for you recently, have you tried like taking a breath, like what he says, taking a breath and taking a smile and like seeing that it's an illusion and trusting that it's gonna all work out? Like, have you done that? And if you have, has it been helpful?
Yeah, yes. I have really honored though the exhaustion that I've felt with feeling like a failure for so long, because this has been a narrative I've been playing out for a long time, probably since I made the decision to break away from the traditional career path that I was on, that was very much like influenced, I would say, by my family and society's expectations of me. And ever since I've kind of broken away from that and pursued my own ambitions and my own goals and desires, I've felt like a failure. And that's really kind of been a very loud voice for me. So I've been honoring that exhaustion, because that is just like so much energy that I'm leaking, feeling like a failure.
Mhm.
And I was saying to Alex yesterday, like, as manifestors, I don't know how to articulate this really, but like, I imagine that wherever, and probably for anyone, wherever we're leaking our energy, we're just like dimming the possibility of those urges and those like big um new desires that want to come through. Like if I'm spending energy feeling like a failure,
Mhm.
it's taking me away from what
Mhm.
I'm really here to do. It's taking me away from my urges and like what I'm here to bring into the world, right? And I'm just not here to be spending time feeling like a failure. Like that's not part of my, I
Yeah.
don't think any of us are really, but it's the journey of the gene keys is to like transcend that shadow, right? So I kind of went off on a tangent. I can't remember what you asked me.
So you're saying, yeah, like, yes,
Oh, yeah.
it does. It did help
Yeah,
in those moments.
to acknowledge it, but then I've also recognized that like I'm just it's just taking me away from my spirit, which is where I need to be
Mhm.
like residing in, because so much of my energy is about like innocence motivation. The 25th gate in my incarnation cross is the gate of the spirit, like creative self-expression, the channel of inspiration. Like so many parts of my chart are just like meant to be playful and innocent and creative and artistic, and not worrying about like failure and outcomes and other people's perceptions and all these things. So I think it takes, like I was saying, honoring that though, in order to recognize, okay, I can let this go now.
Yeah.
Mm.
You know, it's it's diligent practice to have to um bring yourself back, because that's what I've been noticing has been like, it's been really in the forefront of my mind recently, is noticing, oh, how funny, I'm like worrying about money again, or I'm like checking my bank account when I don't need to, or I'm like anticipating when I'm going to get paid. I mean, I know when I'm going to get paid, right? And catching that and just being like, oh, Rafa, like, what, you don't need to worry about that. It's okay.
There, it's like
Yeah.
catching the ego and it's tricks.
And
Yeah.
I've done that recently again, like with what I'm doing in like work. It's just it's becoming more clear to me now,
Mm.
as we've brought in the 54, and this it's actually called the channel of transformation. So the
Mm.
32 and the 54 make up the channel of transformation, and the programming partner of the 32 is the 42. And which
Mm.
was interesting about that is last week when we were talking, you had said to me, remember you asked me to like, where's your Pluto? And like, because I had mentioned some things around like deaths and like identity thefts or person, like, just the concepts of death and rebirth and whatever. And my Pluto is governing my 42 and it's on both sides, like my body side and my design personality side. Yeah.
Yeah.
Design personality side. And it's it's interesting how for me, like now I'm recognizing like, oh, Rafa, like you've seen yourself in one way for so long. And it's an individual channel. I can't remember like what any of the 42 is. I just know that it's coming out of the head center
Yeah.
and it comes down to the throat. And so and it's around like opinions and ideas and like thought. Um, so for me, it's really like that's important for me to know to like stick to my opinions and that they're whatever. But the point that I'm trying to make is that like I've almost too far have only seen myself in one way doing one particular thing. And I've made it a big part of my identity. And now I feel like I'm recognizing that my idea again of success and like when I notice my fear of failure coming up because that is being challenged, and so here comes like the 54, which I have defined, and I have this ambition. So I'm like, okay, going back to the drawing board of like where I want to take this chapter of my life and maybe what's next, but also like where to guide that and where the direction is to go. And I've gotten a little bit more clear, in today and recognizing that, and I've been saying this to myself for a couple of days now, like just what's right in front of you, just what's right in front of you. And just because I'm that way in which I saw myself is breaking down does not mean that I'm failing. Like this is literally called the channel of transformation. Like my ambition here, while I don't have the 30-second, which I wanted to read to you because it says, your drive needs direction. However, so you naturally look to someone with gate 32 to channel your ambitions towards something of lasting value. Without this direction, your drive may turn into blind ambition. And that's sort of how I've been feeling is like, because I don't have the 32, my ambition to what I want to do is kind of getting lost because I was thinking about your prima donna energy. And it's kind of come up for me because I'm like, my ambition sometimes gets so big, and maybe you can relate to this or anybody who has this same constitution in what we're talking about. Like my ambition sometimes gets so big that I forget where I'm at. Like I'm not there. I'm still like over here trying to like gather the experience and the data and the information and the knowledge. And I expect myself to be like in a place where I sort of kind of just know it all. And I think that that's like where the 42 comes into play for me here, because
Yeah.
I do have these really strong ways of viewing certain things, opinions, whatever. And I also have a defined asana. So, you know,
And
um,
so I imagine that that would be just such a like the mind would come into
yes,
place often.
yes,
And so it's the constant like recognizing like the strengths and the gifts of the mind without getting caught up into the not self of the mind, which is, trying to take you where it thinks it needs to go, when really like the body, if we think about like the passenger and the passenger consciousness and like the body, the vessel knows where it's going, but the mind is like, oh no, we should be there, we should be here. Yeah.
yeah. Well, and think about how much that relates to our modern way of success and failure, right? And of
mental and logical, and yeah.
this huge fixation on money,
Mm.
and that being the defining factor of our worth and our value and our success and all of that. But you're absolutely right, because that's another thing that I've kind of recognized recently is, oh, that's your mind. Like those are just thoughts, and they don't have to be definite. And it's a very interesting thing. I'll share with you, like, so as you know, like I would meditate pretty consistently, like daily for the
Yeah.
last couple years.
Yeah.
And in the beginning of the year, that stopped. It like stopped, and not completely. I still will sit from time to time, but I'm noticing now, like, what the practice of presence is and mindfulness when I don't have like that structured practice. Because it is like all these things I've been sharing with you and everyone today is sort of like, oh, this is coming up, noticing it, and like kind of redirecting it in a sense. Or not letting it like take me down this huge rabbit hole or make it mean this whole big thing. And I've noticed that I can sort of like flow through the day a little bit better. I mean, I'm been moody lately, so I'm not constantly talking to, but
But
yeah.
you mean by being present, you're able to move through the day without having that more structured meditation practice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I love that because, and it's interesting that the next one we're going to be exploring is the gift of mindfulness, the 33rd. I got a bit excited after I read this one. I just like jumped ahead because I wanted to read the next one. But I've been thinking about this a lot, like so I teach meditation as part of the work that I do, and mindfulness. And I've often had this thought, like, if the reason why we need meditation is because we're not making space for presence throughout our days. But if we can like maintain as much presence as we can throughout our day, it's all of these moments of presence strung together that almost form a meditation practice. And I like to see mindfulness as being meditation in our daily life. It's
Mhm.
like taking the practice of
Mhm.
meditation out into everyday life. So yeah, I think that's really interesting that you said that. But like it's this remembering, which we'll explore next week, this remembering of what is present right now, and
Yeah.
I suppose the remembering of safety, if we're looking at like the 32nd gene key and this fear of failure and fear of, I think he talks about like the ultimate fear is the fear of not existing,
Mhm.
of our species not existing.
Mhm.
And so, if we can just remind ourselves in each moment that we're safe and that we're here, as hard as that can be, we
Mhm.
can kind of cultivate that presence.
Mhm. I really love talking about fears and kind of probing people with like the
Mm,
fears. And I think also because it's a big part of my incarnation cross.
yeah.
Um, and so have we been in the spleen center yet? I feel like I was just thinking about this before we got on. Like, I don't know if we have been.
We have,
We
because
have.
we've done the 18th and the 28th.
Okay, so we have. Well, I don't know if I don't
Like,
recall,
talk
like,
about it.
yeah, I
Yeah.
don't feel like we have. Um, and so something just came to me, but one thing I wanted to share is what I love about the spleen is the fact that it's governed, like one of the themes here is fears, and that each
Mm,
gate is essentially a different fear.
mm,
That we
yeah.
all, right? These are fears that we all experience to some degree. And I'm just like reminded of I had a breath work. I went on a breath work training in March. And after one of the after one of those breathwork sessions, I had this like really sharp pain on the left middle section of my body. And I was like, that is odd. And I just recognized like a deep kind of fear around like, I believe like what would happen if others aren't okay, like what would happen to me. And it's something I've been working with for a couple months now in therapy, is like this idea that like I can be okay, and if you're not, and if they're not, and if the tribe is not, right? And when I kind of realized that, I put this connection into how closely correlated that is with my immune system, because this is also a place of the immune system. And I've struggled with autoimmune issues, kind of still working through something around immunity currently. And I just felt like maybe this is just such a deep healing for me to recognize, like, that my state of being is not contingent on what's happening around me. Like I can be okay and I can thrive and I can be happy and I can be joyful and experience life and be safe and just be whatever, even if what's around me isn't okay. And I know I kind of feel like I'm being redundant when I say that, but it's been such a big thing for me, you know, with my experiences in family and groups of people and relationship really. And yeah, it was like it all kind of came to me really fast. And I had gotten out of this like breathwork session and I was like, oh, this really hurts. But I feel like all these connections were being made. And I was like, wait, I needed to look up the spleen center. And
Yeah.
and it just, something in it just all really struck home. And for me and my being, like I know it, you know, even if what I'm saying right now is like not even totally making sense to you or anybody who's listening. But for me, I really felt like there was some healing was happening, it specifically with my spleen center, all of these different things.
It does make sense, and I think it's actually something that everyone needs to hear right now, because I think it's more important than ever, and we've talked about this a few times, like, with so many distractions, with so many things that are really based around fear,
Mhm.
with so many terrible things happening in the world, we have to find a way to not be taken off by all of these fears and
Mhm.
to not lose our center. Because if we allow ourselves to be completely consumed by all of the fears and the, atrocities in the world, then it's like taking away our power, which is draining our energy. And like you say, immunity, it's interesting that it's so connected to health and well-being, because if we're not well, how can we take care of other people? How can we take care of the tribe? And yeah, I just think that that is something that we really need to hear at the moment. And I've been feeling this for a while, like there are more distractions than ever, and there's more fear, and there's more access to fear than ever. Like we have more access to information than we've ever had before, so we can see so much more what's going on in the world, and it's like right in our face, and we have to find a way to remain healthy in
Mhm.
amongst all that stress and that
Yeah.
fear. Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're right. And this is where, I'm going to bring it back to the beginning, how you were saying, like, the body is the vehicle and it will
Mm,
guide us. And so the spleen is an awareness center. It's like just our instinct, um,
mm,
like our bodily instinct, right? To just know something. Um, and I really, now the way you're sharing this and its connection to like the body being the vehicle, has made me realize like, well, maybe this has sort of started when my body just decided like it cannot be on social media.
Mm.
So, and a big thing for me around that was like trying to like quiet all the voices and quiet the distraction and get really clear on like what is me. Again, I've said this multiple times, like a big part of that also is because I have so many open centers. Um,
Mm.
so I'm have to be very discerning around like what information I'm going to take in and why I take it in and how it makes me feel. And I just started to realize like I one day I remember telling you I just had this like actual visceral like feeling of not disgust but like sick, like not nauseous, not disgust, but I just felt very like ugh, like ill in my body
Yeah.
after I was just scrolling. And I think shortly after that I made that decision. But my point is that my body kind of probably knew the trajectory, this intelligence of like, okay, these things are surfacing, this is where you're at. And now it's like really time to listen because honestly, actually, since then, I've been more aware and having to like address the things happening with my physical body even more, like
Yeah.
just immunity and other things. So yeah, I mean the body knows.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just makes me think of like this idea of a digital detox, you know, how when people like, well, you detox your body from certain foods or substances or whatever, and you can also do the same like with a digital detox because it's also what we're digesting and consuming and taking in. And I also have deleted social media. I think I told you. So
Mm,
interesting. Last week we were talking about the gate of influence and
yeah.
this influential energy. And I was talking about how I do want to be on social media because I am a content creator and I love to put things out there. But I've recognized like just how dangerous it is and unhealthy for me to be consuming content on there. And so I deleted the apps probably almost a week ago now, and I haven't missed it one bit. And you know what's really interesting? You can actually still upload content. I haven't done this, but you can still upload content from desktop without actually going into the apps. So TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, I don't really upload on anyway, but like YouTube, all of these platforms, you can pretty much upload. So if you want to be a creator and still like put things out there, but not be a consumer, that's possible. It's just a little bit, you've got to take a little bit more time to do it. But that's what I'm playing with at the moment is like, how can I, and I suppose this relates also to some of the conversation around fears and like the fears that we experience around money. Like, how can I be operating in a system that I don't want to really be a part of, but
Yeah.
still, like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, be in the world, but not of the world,
It's
right?
like I know what you're saying, like exactly. I can't even
Yeah.
because that is I'm not gonna say I'm a part of a system that I don't believe in because I value what I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
However, I do feel like there can be improvements and like there are things that just sometimes I get really passionate and shaken up about. And so that's been my sort of like my ambition is coming out. Um, but without a direction, kind of just throwing a temper tantrum and wanting to like still do this work that I do, but without having like a
Yeah. And
place, you know? And so I'm kind of losing what you said, but that's why for me, like I've had this little reminder. It's like, what's right in front of you? Because that is still a place that I can go to. Like like what's right in front of me. The whole, and I talk a lot about this in various settings, but and I've learned it throughout like my education that we have like the micro and we have like the macro level, right? And this is why I think for me, knowing that this is in the tribal circuit, and I have quite a bit of tribal energy in my chart, it's kind of like helped me see like, oh well, you have a tribe now. And so
Mm,
your tribe is your micro, and
yeah.
the macro of what's going on in the world is just going to go on in the world. But where you can put that drive and ambition is to
Mm,
the tribe that you have right in front of you. That's
yeah.
what's right in front of you. And like that kind of helps like center me and ground me and give me a place to like have some direction towards. So now I really am going to be curious. I need to go look up the chart of the person I had a conversation with today to see if they have the 30-second. Because if they have the 30-second, this is going to just be more like proof to the experiment of human design of what it means when you like collaborate with somebody.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'll let you know next week. If it's and if it is, it is, and if it's not, it doesn't, to me, it doesn't take away anything. Like this is also useful.
Yeah. So, well, it brings me to something I read yesterday that I wanted to share, that I think is really interesting because you said something before, and we've talked about this like with your work, and I've said to you before about like knowing what's your battle, knowing what's
Yeah.
for you to fight, because you have the gate of the fighter, and so do I as well. Like it's about knowing like what you stand for and like picking your battles essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just made me think of it before as well. Anyway, I'll read the thing that I wanted to read out. A person's design is the sum of its parts, and when looking at a specific component, such as a line, we need to consider it in relationship to the entire chart. If you pull just one detail out to examine it without considering the whole of the rest of the design, including type, strategy, authority, profile, incarnation cross, centers, channels, and gates, you take it out of context. To truly understand a line, always step back and see it in the context of the bigger picture, the holistic view. So this is at the section of the human design book before the line descriptions. And
Mm.
I just thought that was really important to remember, because it is really interesting to hone in and to like zoom in on this, on
Mm-hmm.
each of these gates and these gene keys. But we have to like remember to also zoom out and see it from the perspective of like who we are as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
And we can look at these aspects of like the fear of failure and how that plays out, but then like can we zoom out as well and take into consideration the whole chart and the whole person.
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, I don't really know what else I wanted to say with that, but it just kind of felt important.
Yeah. Well,
Mm,
I mean, I think it gives everybody an opportunity to recognize like, oh wait, this is just a piece of the whole puzzle, right?
yes.
Because I
Yeah.
think and maybe you're reflecting what I'm essentially been sharing today is that I don't have the 30-second, you don't have the 30-second, but I relate to like the programming partner of the 30-second, which is the 42. And then I also have, like you said, this like gate of the fighter. So, and then I have a lot of tribal circuitry.
Mm. And the
And
hang
and
the fifth, yeah.
right. And so it's like in the context of the situation, there are so many like parts that make it up of like just bring you back home in the
Mm.
sense of like, oh, this is why it's so important to you. This is why like this matters to you so much. Um this is why like you feel it so deeply, and you will like want to do something about it, you know?
Yeah.
And isn't that just like a beautiful thing?
Mm. Yeah, I think it just really takes me back to kind of the whole purpose of this system and this experiment is to like bring us back to more love for and more compassion and acceptance for ourselves. And like, here's my incarnation cross speaking now, it's, and I know one of Ra's quotes, I'll have to find it and put it somewhere or talk about it another time, but it's like, you know, it's all about loving ourselves and having that love for one another. And
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah. And love for the for the shadow too, because that's how we transform it, you know. And I-
yeah,
I'm I'm sort of just starting to realize like, oh, how cute, you know, like, and it and maybe that just is for us, like, or for anybody else, like, maybe
Mhm.
that's just helpful, right? To because when we want to resist it, it persists. When we want
Mm,
to ignore it or deny it or pretend it's not there, then it digs its claws even deeper. Um, and when we ignore it or act like it's not real or wish that it weren't real, really, then we judge and criticize and go down roads that don't bring us closer to like wholeness. And I
yeah.
think that that ultimately is a lot of what the Gene Keys is here to share with us, is like the wholeness of who we are.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And also, I would add to that the reverence and veneration of those who have come before us.
yeah.
And like, that was I've just got goosebumps. That was such a beautiful
Mhm.
visual that he talks about this spiral staircase. And like we look down on those who've come before us and we look up to those who are ahead of us. And I don't know if I'm saying this correctly, but we stand on the shoulders of those who've come before us, and those are like our ancestors. And that was part of that little quote that you shared. Like, every time you find yourself feeling stressed about money or whatever it was, take a pause, take a breath, and smile. And thank your ancestors as well. Like, we've inherited this fear of failure, but, you know, we're here to also play our own part in transcending it, just
Mhm.
like they did in their own way. You
Mhm.
know,
Yeah.
we're all, we're all a part of that puzzle.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
just, I was I want to be like, thank you to the OGs for allowing us to be here, and thrive in many ways and survive and have this kind of conversation. And yeah, I think that was a beautiful way to round it all out. So as always, if you guys have the 30-second or the whatever you don't have it, just share it with us. Let us know, drop it in the comments, and we'll see you on the next one.
Yeah. Thank you.